My project is about the barriers that women face in the UK when entering Parliament.
My project is all about laminetic and veteran horses' feeds and how they differ, but also how they're similar. So it's all just researching what can benefit them to reduce health problems in the future or at the time when they're present.
So it's about whether intelligence is a genetic or environmental trait. So I was originally looking at doing something focused just purely on genetics. I looked at doing genetic editing and the ethics of that, and then I sort of delved into the nature-nurture side of it, and I found that quite interesting. So this is how I sort of, after a bit of further research on that, that's sort of how I came to my title.
So my project is on the barriers in creating a net zero building and how can you convert an existing building to net zero.
My project's about if natural talent really exists in sport. So it's about if you have genetic traits which make you succeed at elite level, or it's something that you can learn through practice.
My project's about whether being a vegetarian is healthy for you, so if there's more health benefits than health risks and what the health benefits and risks are.
My project is about whether or not it's ethical to have a COVID-19 vaccine mandate. So I looked at human rights and also the factors that affected the vaccine in order to come to my conclusion.
So my project's about malaria and specifically the treatments and preventative measures used to try and reduce its case rates and mortality rates in sub-Saharan Africa.
So my project is about Greta Thunberg and what impact she has had on different generations. So I've looked at how on younger generations she's had more of a positive impact because there's lots of protests that have been sparked because of her. Fridays for Future is a huge movement that has begun as a result of her protests and her activism. And this is it's making awareness of the issue to world leaders and to everyone across the globe.
I want to study politics and international relations at university, and especially during coronavirus, I've seen that there's not many women involved in the decision making of the country.
I decided to study this because I'm hoping to do veterinary at university, and this is my pony, Honey. So I have a veteran at home, so it was all to do research that I can use in the world around me for her, as well as giving myself a bit of insight that I can use at uni when we learn about nutrition.
I think just interest in studying something that was really different to my A-levels because I don't do psychology, so sort of delving into the psychology bit as well was very interesting for me to do something different rather than what I was doing in my A-levels.
I'm hoping to study architecture at university, so when I was looking to do a relevant EPQ, I tried to follow what already interested me with architecture, and that was more sustainable housing and green architecture, and it led me to choose net zero.
So I started with the psychological effects of confidence, and when I was researching I read this book, Bounce, which basically changed my opinion on my title, and I found this much more interesting to research, so I changed it to this.
Well, I'm a really strict vegetarian myself, and I wanted to know more on a personal level of what I was eating and how it affected my body, but also I was just really interested in how it would affect the healthcare system, and yeah.
I was interested in medical ethics because I thought I wanted to do medicine for a while. But I just generally found vaccines and why people refuse them quite interesting, because I personally take all the vaccines I get, but I know that other people have their reasons for refusing them, and I wanted to understand that a bit more.
So I want to go into medicine in the future, so I wanted to choose a medical related topic, and I thought malaria is quite a globally affecting disease, so it'd be interesting to learn about a disease that affects other countries as well as the UK. So
I've always had an interest in global politics and climate change itself because it's a really important thing that's happening at the moment. It's all over the media as well, and Greta Thunberg herself appears in a lot of online articles across the news. And I started watching videos on her and her speeches, and I realised how important it was that she was raising this message and getting it out to people.
Probably the most interesting and shocking thing I found out was that in the current cabinet, only 8 of the positions are filled by women, and there's 32 positions in the cabinet.
I quite enjoyed the bit about biotin, which is you might have heard of supplement in humans, but you can also use it in horses, and it helps grow their hooves, and because it's all part of like building up keratin and things, and I found that really interesting how it's quite well linked to humans and horses, how they can both have the same sort of supplements which can benefit them in the same way.
I found out that, I think I've got it on here, IQ really correlates with sort of life expectancy and disease risk. So yeah, it says a standard deviation of 15 points above average decreases risk of illness and mortality by up to 25%, and that's for things like strokes, heart disease, and yeah, a number of different things. But it's really interesting that something sort of you would think of as psychological can have this like broader impact.
That buildings worldwide currently use about 40% of global energy.
Well, I just found there are a lot of real life examples where performers like the Williams sisters have actually, they started practicing at 3 years old, and that by the time they were 12 they'd clocked up like so much practice compared to other performers, which made them as successful as they are today.
I think an interesting fact for me was how if you're vegetarian you have to be careful what foods you eat in terms of getting enough iron into your body, because not eating meat can mean that you're inhibiting the amount of iron, and that can make you really anemic, and especially if you're a teenage girl.
I found out that the vaccinations, there are 2 different ways of measuring how effective they are, and I didn't know this before. And the RRR is the relative risk reduction, which is what people are more known as the efficacy of the vaccine, which is how effective it is. But there's also the NNV, which is the number needed to vaccinate, and that's how effective it is at reducing the risk to other people. So Pfizer's got a very high RRR, so it means if you have the Pfizer you're less likely to become ill with the virus, whereas with AstraZeneca it has a lower RRR, but it's less easy for it to spread to other people if you have that vaccine, so it reduces the risk to other people if you have AstraZeneca.
I'd say an interesting fact was that the vaccine they've currently created is only about 25 to 35% effective, which is much, much lower than most other vaccines. So they're working on other ones at the moment to try and be more effective.
I think actually researching about why people don't like her so much, I thought the psychology behind that was really interesting, about how they use her autism and her Asperger's as reasons they don't like her. Because I found a whole study about it, and I didn't realise before how much of that had an impact. Also reading the Twitter feuds between her and Donald Trump and Putin as well, they did make me laugh because they were just so, I don't know, it was just kind of, she had a good reply to them basically, and a lot more people sided with Greta Thunberg than they did with Donald Trump. And since he was a president, it shows how influential and important she is, and she's getting more support for that.
I think the most fun part was researching a topic that I'm generally very interested in.
I actually quite enjoyed writing the 5,000 word report, which sounds a bit weird, but once you get into it, it was quite good fun, and the research was just nice, researching whatever you like and being able to choose a project which you can sit down and enjoy, because this is all my hobby anyway, so I really enjoyed just researching it really.
I think it was really interesting doing all the research and being able to read into a subject that deeply, but I've also really enjoyed like putting together the board and being a bit creative with it. It's been interesting as well.
I just really enjoyed like the independent study and being able to like choose something that really interested me as a person and not like a curriculum.
I found when I started writing my report, it was actually really interesting, and it was a struggle to stop writing, which at the beginning I thought wasn't going to be the case.
I think making the whole presentation was the most fun because I had all my information and just like displaying it was really quite like actually looking back at what I'd done and finding the most interesting points.
I quite like looking at the data, which some people might find quite boring, but it was quite interesting because I didn't know anything, whereas I kind of already know the facts that are in the media, but I didn't know the precise like statistics, and some of them were quite shocking, so it was quite interesting to find out about that. I quite like making the board, so that was quite fun as well.
I enjoyed learning about all the different aspects of malaria and understanding the science behind the disease, which I wasn't very educated about before.
I think what I enjoyed most was I kind of reading the different sides of the argument as well. So I watched some videos I watched one on this morning about Piers Morgan debating against two people, one teenager who likes her and one teenager who doesn't. And I think listening to the arguments on either side was really interesting to me, and hearing how different people think on the subject. Also, before I started writing the project, I watched a documentary on Greta Thunberg, and watching what she'd done over the last few years I found really interesting because it kind of showed me how this is really important to her and how she's doing everything in her power to make a difference.